To show a kid that you interestingly care about them, that is a huge stepping stone in their confidence in moving forward in their life. You need to be honest and have integrity with these kids because, they'll test the boundaries. Hey, there's a great quote from Eleanor Roosevelt: good leaders inspire people to have confidence in the leader. A great leader inspires people to have confidence in themselves. The confidence in talking to people is what I think our young people are truly missing.
If you're not growing as a leader, then you need to take a long, hard look in the mirror and say, what do I need to do to be a better leader?
Welcome to the Leadership and Love podcast. We will cover leadership, mindset, personal development, and sales and marketing. You will experience thought-provoking conversations with both nationally and internationally recognized leaders. Our goal is to inspire you and deliver actionable items that you can implement that are going to help you accelerate your growth. Get ready to discover the magic and the power when you lead with love.
Today I have a very, very dear and lifelong friend, and also I would call it a companion in the journey of leadership. Wendy Mills spent her entire career as a teacher. She was in Utah and she led an FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America. She led an FBLA chapter in Utah. She led an FBLA chapter here in Illinois before she got to Wakanda. And then she led the Wakanda FBLA chapter for about a 16, 17 year period. And so I met Wendy about 16 or 17 years ago, and we became very good friends and also partners in this thing called FBLA and leading young people. So Wendy, thank you very much for being here, and we really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thanks, Louie. I'm happy to be here. Like you say, you and I have worked through a lot of different stories. We could write a book on these kids.
Yes, we certainly could. So the first thing I'd like to share and I think that you are a master at a number of things working with young people, but I'd like to ask you for our listeners, because I think this is a great challenge in today's environment, because business owners, managers are hiring and bringing on young people. What would your advice be, your wisdom, to somebody that's a leader that's hiring younger people, how to connect and work with them?
The thing I noticed with the kids is a lot of kids have to be around a positive environment. Kids have to feel like, okay, when they go to FBLA events or competition, there's a positive energy that they're going to get something out of it. And then I feel like trust has got to be up there as well. They feel like they can trust you, that the communication's there, and that you actually truly care about them. And that's obviously the other one, compassion. A lot of them now, you don't know their background at home. Being a Title I school, I had kids in trailer parks and government housing. And to show a kid that you interestingly care about them, that is a huge stepping stone in their confidence in moving forward in their life. So those are probably my top three: the hope, the trust, and compassion.
That's powerful stuff. So let's go a little deeper into each one of them. What did you do on a regular basis working with young people to give them hope?
I would probably say, a lot of the kids, their vision, they gave me their personal and chapter goals every year. And I think a lot of it is the people that I actually brought in, people like you that were the mentor and coaches, that really did inspire the kids. I mean, we're talking not just a classroom of kids. As Louis knows, it's closer to 100 to 120 kids for competition. So that took like a whole community to come together to inspire these kids. And each team or individual would get with a coach or mentor, and they would inspire them to give them the confidence they needed to be successful.
Wendy, you just hit one out of the park, and I want to make sure our listeners catch it. So if you're a leader of any sort of team, a family, an organization, a company, one of the things that Wendy just said was very powerful. He brought in people from the community, and those people as a community gave these kids hope. The entire community was positive and uplifting and poured into the kids. This is truly some masterful wisdom on how to connect to an audience, a community. So could you tell our listeners, what did you do to build trust with these young people?
The communication was a big thing. And if they asked me for help for a certain thing, if the kids just said, hey, I need some help as far as like my event goes, or I don't understand something, then I would be there. If I told them my word that I would be somewhere at like 6 p.m. to help them, or they can come to my classroom at lunch, I wanted them to know that that was a safe place. and they could come and get help, whether a mentor showed up to help them or I helped them one-on-one. That trust was such a huge thing that I felt a lot of kids felt safe and that they were trusted. And the integrity, obviously, that is a big part of it too. You need to be honest and have integrity with these kids because, they'll test the boundaries. And that was constantly something that I had to make sure that the kids understood, hey, there's trust in here, there's integrity and respect, that every kid knew that they had to have in order to be part of FBLA. I wanted the kids to hold themselves to a higher standard. That was part of my leadership was you have an expectation to be part of this organization. And if you don't hold to those expectations, then you need to find another organization. We wanted the kids to get the most out of the organization. And there are a couple of years they were with us. Louie and I had the privilege of having some kids for 4 years. But you just wanted to make sure that they got the most out of it. And that honesty and respect definitely had to be part of it.
Wendy, that you get just such brilliance. So again, for our listeners, I want to emphasize two things that Wendy said. One of them is communication, honest, open communication. Really, really important in any relationship, but especially with young people, because they're looking for you to do something wacky where they can say, yeah, see, I told you we can't trust him or her, and especially if you're older. The other thing she said was she did, and I watched this on a continual basis, she provided a safe space. She didn't judge them. She just accepted each student as they were. And the other thing that she said was integrity. All three of these things very critical in your communication. One of the things that'll shut down communication in a heartbeat is when somebody comes to share something with you and then you are judgmental and or angry and or negative, then they're not going to come back again because you're not a safe place for them to communicate. And then obviously the last thing, which is really important as a leader, is integrity. And Wendy, you nobody I know led with that kind of integrity with those students. And I'd like to share something with the audience. The first couple times that I went to nationals with Wendy, this is the connection she made as a leader. And she's going to give you her contact information at the end of this. So if you're working with young people, whether in your business, a nonprofit, if you're a teacher and you want to reach out to Wendy, she's going to offer this. But I'd like to share something real quick. The first couple of national events I went to with Wendy, we would take a bus, we'd go to wherever it was in the country, and we'd take a bus back and forth to the airport. The first time I watched students get off the bus, now nationals goes on at the end of the end of June, early July. And so for most of the seniors, it's the end of their high school experience. And I would watch both boys and girls get off that bus with tears in their eyes to say goodbye to Wendy. And so I can tell you that the things she's sharing with you works because she was so connected to these students that they were emotionally sad that this part of their life, and more importantly, the relationship they'd been sharing with Wendy, was over. So Wendy, that was one of the reasons why I stayed in the program as long as I did, because of your leadership. And I'd like to share, how do you show compassion in leadership, especially with young people, but also hold the boundary so that they know who's in charge?
Boy, and that's a tough balance too. I think you have to really watch that every single day. The compassion part is definitely emotional intelligence. You have to let the kids understand that we're here for support. We're here for mentorship. Obviously, we had financial issues as well, and I wanted them to know that I did care about them, but that there was a respect level that comes with that as well. And what I mean by that is if somebody sponsored them, which Louie and a lot of the mentors did, they had to write a thank you note to that person. Sometimes it was anonymous, or it was they wanted to put the name on it. And I wanted to make sure the kids understood that, you still worked to go, but there were people that cared about you wanted to make sure that you went. And I'd have kids that would cry at a practice session because they were so scared in front of the judges because they had never spoke to an adult like that and shook their hands. And my judges were awesome to let them walk out, take a deep breath, and walk back in. And that really showed compassion. And some kids asked for extra help, whether I had to call Louie in or another mentor. Louie remembers that a lot of times. I'm like, look, there's some kids struggling. We need to help them. So I think that really showed the compassion to show, hey, we're here. Whether they got up on stage or not, Louie and I would see a complete turnaround in these kids because of the emotional attachment they got from us. They truly believed in us. And again, the safe space goes with that too. But I really think the compassion part about knowing that, hey, you know what, these people care. And it wasn't just me that cared. They knew that everybody cared. And I think the kids really took to that.
Thank you for sharing that. And then the second piece of that is, what would your advice be to our listeners and fellow leaders about how to maintain the boundary, right? To hold that boundary and not let them get away with wacky stuff or take advantage of things and still have that compassion.
Right. And what we made the kids do in the beginning is they did have to sign a membership, kind of a code of ethics, that they would do the following things to stay in the chapter. And the parents had to sign it as well. And if they broke any of those code of ethics, it could be a possible probation or removed from membership. When it gets to the state and national level, because you're dealing with not just representing Wakanda and the community, it's more the state level. They had a code of ethics that they had to adhere by too. They had to sign it with their parents on the state and national level. And we had kids that tested the boundaries, and a couple of them did not go to nationals because they broke the code of ethics at state. So they knew with Miss Mills, look, she cares about you, but if you start breaking your own integrity and not following the rules, you're out. There wasn't a slap on the wrist or saying, oh, okay, well, we'll just make sure you don't do it again. If they broke code of ethics, there was some kind of repercussions or accountability for their actions. And I think that's important because nowadays a lot of kids struggle with accountability for their action or being responsible for their action.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And one of the things that she said that was really important is there was clarity on exactly what the rules were. Here's our code of ethics. You're signing a document. Once you get somebody to that place, whether it's the rules on how they work in your environment, when they show up, what they wear, and this is true of any organization, then at that point, once we have agreement and we have it in writing, then we can hold people accountable. And then one of the other things that Wendy just touched on that's very, very powerful, and that is if once we have accountability, when they break those rules, if there's no consequences, then there really are no rules. Wendy, there's a couple other things I wanted to cover with you. What's one of the things that you would recommend or ways that you would suggest for leaders working with young people to keep their patience?
I was just about ready to say you have to have patience. Oh my goodness. Yes, there's a lot of times where I think Louie can attest to this too, because we took so many kids. I had to be patient and take a deep breath and know that there's kids that have never experienced this and left Wakanda High School in the city of Wakanda. This was their first road trip. And so I had to be very patient on knowing that they get kind of goofy sometimes and kind of get out of their space and have to be kind of led back. Louie knows I was big on meetings, so I would always have a meeting on the bus before we actually left, and telling them what their expectation was before we showed up to the hotel. And then as Louie knows, as soon as we got to the hotel, we would have another meeting the night before competition to get the kids to understand this is the expectation, because so many did not know because we took so many every year. A lot of them may be repeats. A lot of them had never been in a hotel before. So we had to explain the expectation every single time we went to competition. Even volunteering events, they were told they had to wear their t-shirt. They were told they had to say yes and no and please and thank you. And they had to look people in the eye. And that was scary for some kids, even at that small little level. Some kids hadn't even done that before.
And so, Wendy, you just keep dropping all these golden nuggets. So you are. So listeners, a couple of things here. One of them is that she's still talking about this thing called communication. Her communication was constant and consistent. Here's something else that she's talking about that she did that in this communication that I want you to be aware of. I have an exercise that I do in the room when I do speaking for organizations and events around leadership. But one of the things that ties to this is what Wendy did was through this communication, she didn't assume anybody knew something because they'd been in the organization for a while. I want to repeat that. Wendy was not assuming that because somebody was in the organization last year and went to the national competition, that they remembered the rules. And so she constantly repeated this. As a leader, I want you to understand this constant regular communication and not assuming that somebody knows something is very, very powerful for your success. Wendy, one of the things I'd like you to talk about next is whenever you would connect me to a student, you knew the story. You knew that mom and dad were divorced, or you knew that dad was this, or you knew that they were having trouble paying the bills, whatever it might be. How did you build those relationships and keep and gather that information?
With the kids too, and like Louie was saying, a lot of kids, because of membership, a couple of the kids would say, it's tough for my parents, or they would talk to me privately, or I would get an email, depending on how they wanted to start the communication, or the parents would actually let me know because the kids were just too, I don't want to use the word embarrassed, but they just didn't know how to approach me. Then that's what I would actually take a student in at lunchtime or before school or after school and just talk to them. It could have been something as simple as, I don't have a pair of pants for state competition. I don't have a pair of shoes. I don't have a tie. And it was such a great thing to be able to have people that would donate their old clothes because their kids grow up so fast, that we had a closet in my office area where kids could pick things. And this was always done privately, where it was just us. And I always told them, you don't have to say anything to anybody. This is something between you and I. And that constant talk about those kids. And a lot of times the membership list, I'd be able, because we are a low income group, I would always get the list of families that fell under that, so that I knew that there would be an issue or something came up if the kids' success went to nationals. I knew that. So it either came through the communication of the school, having the list of the kids that were low income, or it could have been the kid reached out to me individually. Because I always please ask them that in the beginning. If finances is going to be your issue, I don't want that to be the reason why you don't join FBLA or why you can't go to nationals. If these kids truly want to go, Louie and I and all the other community would try and do the best we could to make sure every single student got to go. Or a parent would just email me and say, I wanted to give you a heads up. We're divorced. This is the situation. I don't know if they can make it. So it was really a combination of all three was how I got that communication.
And so again, she's stressing this communication, very, very important. The other thing that she just said, if you're a leader, are you committed to what Wendy did and the way she led? She said that in lunch hours easy, but she said she would meet with them before school or after school. Are you that committed to your team that you would meet them before or after work? Now, I want to talk about something, Wendy, especially with young people, and you are also a master of this. How did you build these powerful, strong, heartfelt, heart-centered relationships with these kids, but not cross the line and let them be too friendly? Right? So what did you do to maintain that?
Like you say, you don't want that friend to friend. You still have to have the authority figure versus the student. And the one thing I think the kids realize too is when they sign that code of ethics, I think they know right there, okay, Miss Mills has an expectation I have to follow. And I think another thing that helps the kids with that as well is, I think, just my actions by what I do. I mean, it's your words obviously help as well, but I think my actions and what I did let the kids know that, hey, she cares about me, but she also has an expectation. So when kids ask for help, it wasn't just, oh, okay, Miss Mills is going to pay my whole way to nationals. There was a whole process. They had to send a thank you note to the person. They had to come up with their own safe food money. We gave them a number that mom and dad could handle. Sometimes we did a payment plan with the students. And the last thing I would ask them is, please make sure that when you have a situation financially where you can help others, to give back. I want kids to understand that, yes, you could be in a financial distress in your family. Most of the time it's not their fault, but when you actually get as an adult in your life, to definitely give back to others. And, I hope the kids saw that message. I know Louie would say that as well, but to me, that's a very powerful message that I think every young person nowadays has to hear.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And again, she's just dropping just such great wisdom to work with and lead young people. And she didn't need to be mean or harsh to do this or to hold or maintain these boundaries. And I think often as leaders, we think that discipline, consequences have to come with anger or loud talking or even yelling or those kinds of things, and they don't. And I think you're absolutely right. It was very critical that the students paid it forward.
Hey, there's a great quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. Good leaders inspire people to have confidence in the leader. A great leader inspires people to have confidence in themselves. And that's what I think I had as a goal every year, to get as many kids through the program to have that self-confidence so they could be successful in whatever they chose in life.
Yeah, I agree. And you're absolutely right to watch that transformation. And we saw it, right? We'd watch a snot-nosed freshman turn into this amazing, confident senior that would win first place in nationals, which was really quite a feat and accomplishment. Wendy, is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share with the audience before we go?
The only thing I would say is it's more powerful now, these organizations, because of social media and kids not really interacting with people. As a teacher, kids wouldn't even look me in the eye and they saw me every day. So to have FBLA there to help these kids have these transferable skills, I think is more powerful now than ever, because kids don't even know, as Louie knows, how to even tie a tie. Kids don't even know the top button on their suit, just things that we take for granted that they were just never taught or just never had to expose themselves to. But confidence in talking to people is what I think our young people are truly missing. So that right there is very powerful. So these organizations are trying to do that and help kids understand that you can be successful no matter what your situation is at home.
Yeah, thank you. And I'd like to, for those of you that are leaders that are listening, I recently did a video on Facebook after Charlie Kirk was assassinated about, it's time to pick up the ball. And if you haven't been, I would recommend that now's a great time. And to Wendy's point, if you're a leader anywhere and not spending some time with young people, I'd highly recommend you get out of your comfort zone, out of your office, and go do it. I think there's, as you and I both well know, Wendy, it's quite a legacy to pour into a young person. We don't ever know how far that goes. I don't believe God wants us to know, right? It's going to be wherever it goes. One of my other questions I love to ask our guests, what's one book that you read that had a big difference in your life and why?
I would probably say the book from Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's the only book you need to lead to be successful. He has some very powerful tips in there that you can still use today. And again, it's talking about, it's not always your GPA and the college that you graduated from, like Notre Dame or Yale. It's about the confidence and the smile that you show to people every time you meet them. It's the greeting, the handshake. It's the hi, how are you, saying hello and acknowledging somebody. And I feel like we've lost some of that in society today. So this book, written back in 1940 or 50 something, I always refer back to it when I deal with a lot of teenagers going, okay, now I need to get my mindset back on what do I need to do to reach these kids? Because Louie was right. There's some kids that were harder to reach. And I love that book, Dale Carnegie, because there's old-fashioned values and traditions in there that we need to help these kids today with in order for them to be successful. That's why I love that book.
Yeah, it's funny. That's one of my favorite books too. And one of the things that's in there is what's everybody's favorite word, and it's their name, right? And one of the things that you were great at, even when there was 400 students in the FBLA chapter, you knew every name. You knew every name. And so, again, great wisdom, and thank you for sharing that. Wendy, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are leaders and hiring young people and working in organizations and teachers. How can they reach out to you for help or support in leading young people?
Actually, I can offer my email. I can offer my phone number. Right now, I do chapter support for California and Washington and Alabama, where they will email me their questions. Sometimes we do it on Zoom. If we need to do it on Zoom and make it a little bit more personable, I am more than welcome to set up a meeting for that as well. Sometimes that's more beneficial to people to get it more one-on-one and see the person. But any way that's easier for them, I can offer my phone number or my email, or even, again, the next step, a Zoom call.
Thank you for sharing that information. And as usual for our listeners, although that information, her email address and phone number will be in the meeting notes, feel free to reach out to Wendy. Wendy, again, from the bottom of my heart, I love you. Working together with you, helping those kids, truly one of the best things that's ever happened to me in my life. And thank you for sharing your wisdom today. You continue to move me and inspire me. I'm so happy that you're still connected to the organization and helping kids across the country. So again, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Louie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again for joining us and listening to this episode of Leadership and Love. I would like to challenge you to ask yourself, what's one thing that you heard today that you can implement immediately to improve your leadership and accelerate your growth? If you've gotten value out of this episode or learned something that you can implement today, we'd ask that you please share it with those that you care about. Our goal is to create more leaders who are leading with love.